The golden sun dipped low over Willow Creek Estates, spreading soft light over the neat lawns and white fences. It was the kind of neighborhood that looked peaceful from a distance, yet tension quietly brewed beneath the surface. Behind every manicured hedge was a rule. Behind every friendly smile a silent competition. For Thomas Reeves, this place was supposed to be his retirement dream, but lately, it felt more like a test of patience. Thomas was a retired firefighter who'd spent 30 years running into burning buildings while others ran out. He was a calm man, firm but kind, the type who believed that respect was earned, not demanded. His wife Ellen loved gardening and spent her mornings among the roses, humming softly as the sun rose. Their backyard was her haven, surrounded by a sturdy wooden fence and a black gate that marked the boundary of their peace. For years, Thomas had maintained his home quietly, never breaking a rule, never bothering anyone. But all that changed when Karen Dempsey became president of the HOA. Karen was the type of woman who found problems where none existed. Her clipboard was always ready, her tone always sharp, and her need for control endless. She lived 2 houses down with her teenage son, Tyler, who shared her arrogance but none of her restraint. It began when Thomas replaced his old wooden gate with a new black steel one. It wasn't extravagant, just stronger, more secure, and built to last. He even matched the color and design to the neighborhood style. But a few days later, Karen appeared at his door with her ever-present clipboard. Her smile was thin, rehearsed, and just polite enough to sound like a warning. "Mr. Reeves," she began, tapping her pen, "I noticed a new gate at your property. You didn't submit an approval request." Thomas looked at her calmly, his hands tucked in his pockets. "The rulebook doesn't require approval for a replacement. It's the same size, same spot, same color." Karen's lips tightened, as if she'd swallowed something sour. "Still," she said, "it hasn't been reviewed by the board. You'll need to remove it." Thomas gave a small nod and closed the door without another word. Inside, Ellen sighed, already knowing what that look meant. "She's starting again," she murmured. Thomas nodded. "Let her," he said softly. "Some people need control to feel important." He thought that would be the end of it, but with people like Karen, nothing ever ended quietly. Over the next week, letters began to appear in his mailbox. Notice of violation. Gate noncompliance. Potential fine. The same words repeated with different dates. Thomas filed them all neatly in a folder, saying nothing. He knew arguing would only feed her. But every time he stepped outside, he could feel her eyes from across the street, watching, judging, waiting for a reaction. One Thursday evening, Thomas locked his gate for the night, as he always did. It was routine, a small habit to protect their garden tools and outdoor furniture. But that single turn of the keys set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. Tyler, skateboarding with his friends nearby, noticed the lock. To him, it wasn't security, it was defiance. He swaggered over, his skateboard wheels crunching against the pavement. "Hey, old man," he called out, rattling the gate. "Why'd you lock this thing? Trying to keep the neighborhood out?" Thomas stepped onto the porch, his voice even. "It's my property, Tyler. Please don't touch it." Tyler smirked. "It's community access," he said mockingly. Thomas frowned. "It leads to my backyard, not the park. You know that." Tyler scoffed, shaking the gate harder until it clanged. "Whatever, man. You don't own the street." Then he skated off, laughing with his friends. Thomas sighed, his heart heavy, not from anger, but from disbelief at how far entitlement could go. He told Ellen about it later, but she brushed it off. "He's just a kid," she said gently. "Let it go." Thomas wished he could. The next morning, red and blue lights flashed through their curtains. Ellen rushed to the door, her heart racing. 2 police officers stood on the porch. One of them, a tall man with kind eyes, said, "Mr. Reeves? We received a call about a possible incident, unlawful confinement, and verbal threat." Thomas blinked, confused. "What?" The officer looked uneasy. "A minor claims you locked a public gate and threatened him." Behind them, Karen appeared, arms folded, face full of fake concern. Beside her stood Tyler, pretending to look shaken. "He yelled at me," Tyler said dramatically. "Said he'd hurt me if I touched his stupid gate," Ellen gasped. Thomas clenched his jaw, but kept his voice calm. "Officers, please, let me show you something." He led them around to the backyard, pointing out the property line markers and paperwork. The officers examined everything: the fence, the gate, the lock, the deed. After a few minutes, the kind-eyed officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this is his private property. He's within his rights to lock it." Karen's expression faltered. "That can't be true. The HOA controls the perimeter structures." The officer shook his head. "Only if the HOA owns the land, ma'am, and it doesn't." Tyler shifted uncomfortably, the performance slipping. The officers apologized to Thomas for the disturbance and left. As they pulled away, Karen hissed under her breath, "You think you can humiliate me like this? You'll regret it." Thomas didn't answer. He simply met her eyes, his calm gaze more powerful than any argument. Then he went inside and closed the door. But Karen wasn't done. Over the following weeks, Thomas began receiving daily notices from the HOA. Complaints that his mailbox paint was too dull. Fines for unauthorized flower beds. Petty nonsense designed to wear him down. Tyler, emboldened by his mother's pettiness, started leaving trash bags near their fence and mocking Thomas whenever he passed by. Ellen began to lose sleep. "I just wanted peace," she whispered one night, tears in her eyes. "Why do people hate peace?" Thomas took her hand gently. "Because peace reminds them what they're missing," he said softly. He stayed patient, documenting every notice, every incident, every word. He knew that sometimes patience wasn't weakness, it was preparation. One hot afternoon, Ellen went to visit her sister. Thomas drove to the hardware store, and when he returned, he froze in disbelief. The gate was gone, torn off. The hinges bent, the lock broken, pieces scattered on the ground. The air felt heavy, silent. He knew instantly who was responsible. But instead of rage, he felt something colder, a quiet disappointment. He walked straight to his security camera, replayed the footage, and there it was, Tyler, smirking, using a crowbar to pry off the gate. And behind him, watching from the driveway with crossed arms, stood Karen. That was all the proof he needed. He didn't confront them. He didn't shout. He simply called his attorney. 2 days later, police cruisers appeared again, but this time, they stopped at Karen's house. The same kind-eyed officer approached her door, holding a warrant for property damage. "Mrs. Dempsey," he said firmly, "we have video evidence that your son vandalized private property. You're both liable." Karen's face drained of color. "That's absurd. We were enforcing community standards." "Ma'am," the officer replied, "HOA rules don't override the law." Tyler tried to hide behind her, muttering excuses, but the video was undeniable. Several neighbors gathered quietly across the street, watching the scene unfold. For years, they had endured Karen's control, but now, they saw the mighty president face the same rules she weaponized against others. The aftermath was swift. Tyler was sentenced to community service and ordered to pay restitution. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, and after hours of debate, Karen was voted out as president. It was a silent victory for everyone who had suffered under her watch. For the first time, Willow Creek Estates felt lighter. Thomas repaired the gate himself, stronger than before, painting it a deep bronze that glowed under the evening light. Ellen replanted her roses, each bloom brighter than the last. Neighbors who once avoided them now waved when they passed. The air carried laughter again, soft, genuine, free. Peace had returned, not because of revenge, but because of truth. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, a young couple walked by and stopped to admire the garden. "Your place looks beautiful," they said warmly. "After everything you went through, how did you stay?" Thomas smiled, his weathered hands resting on the porch railing. "Because sometimes," he said quietly, "you don't protect a fence, you protect what's behind it." Ellen looked at him, her eyes reflecting both pride and peace. For the first time in months, they sat together on the porch without fear of a clipboard or complaint. The sound of crickets filled the air, and the gate creaked softly in the breeze, standing strong, a quiet symbol of endurance. The neighborhood had learned something that day: rules mean nothing without respect. Karen eventually sold her house and moved away. Some said she joined another HOA across town, others whispered she learned humility. Tyler finished his community service and left for college, quieter, perhaps wiser. But for Thomas and Ellen, none of that mattered anymore. Their home was peaceful again, and that was enough.